What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Milwaukee Sports Performance Podcast. I'm back here today with Jason Tipton, round two. We are going to get into speed and golf today a little bit. Again, it is the winter. I think I've seen 3 or 4 golfers this week already and had 3 or 4 conversations about I would like to hit the golf ball farther next year. So hopefully this is that very relevant. I think there's the time, especially up here with an off season, that everyone goes to, I want to work on getting faster. So if you missed it, we recorded a first episode. That was episode 1. Goes through some assessments and maybe some reflections and things that you could think about that way to decide, do you actually need to work on speed, or is it just something that like your buddies are doing and you feel like you need to work on speed? So you can definitely look back to that episode first. But today we're going to talk about kind of building speed both safely and, more important, effectively, where it'll transfer into the golf course, both through what Jason does from a skill development standpoint and what we can help players with in the gym. So Jason, thanks again for the time, and excited to dive into it for this topic with you today.
This is an important one.
Yeah, you send them to me. It's like I take lessons from my bill if you want to hit it shorter and more crooked. Otherwise, Jason's your guy. So give people a little overview, state of golf. Why does speed matter? Why is it such a conversation about wanting to hit it farther?
Well, I think it's honestly a very popular thing. You run especially on the PGA Tour. I think the tour really dictates the narrative of golf in general, worldwide. It seems like, definitely on social media. You've seen guys like Bryson, who years ago in his SMU, mailer account, I guess he was, hitting it fine, but then he became Bryson that we know that was trying to drive the par 5 at the Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
Guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, same thing. He started hitting a little bit farther, got himself into some better positions, started winning one major. So it's obviously a critical part of golf, especially where it's going. Even in the college game, going to a couple of college tournaments, they just all move it.
Yeah.
And if you're not moving it, you're having a harder time scoring, right?
Yeah.
So, I do think the level that you can get to at distance is going to have an effect of how far you can go in golf. So if you're hitting it 200 yards off the tee, you're probably not playing the PGA Tour, right?
Yeah.
You can play a perfectly nice game of golf, hit it 200 yards off the tee. I see it all the time at a club when I play with members, where they hit it 220 off the tee. They'll give me a game, no problem.
Yeah,
you can play it, but you're probably not gonna get down to a single digit. Hank Haney talks a lot about that. If you can't hit it 200 yards, it's gonna be really hard to be a single digit. You can hit 250, sure, single digit, but probably not playing on the tour. Now, on a tour, 300 is kind of the mark, because they just seem to be taking this distance thing and just moving courses farther and farther back to where you're playing 7,800 yards for a U.S. Open. So, I think that really drives this distance conversation. What do you see from your end?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think you can look at some of the stats and really think about it from a standpoint of, you look at the money list and it's pretty well correlated to, it does seem like it's kind of leveled off, that there seems to be this threshold that like, there's really no reason to hit it past Rory. Like once you get past that, like there's a tie between ball speed and dispersion. And it just seems like there's still this threshold above the mid 180s that it's like, you can do it, but why?
Well, it seems like Bryson had a little bit of issue with that. He was pumping it up like with long drive, almost numbers. But when you have to post a score,
it only helps you so much.
Right.
But I think it was maybe more Cowell that was talking about it. And it's like, and he's one of the best iron players in the world. But I think maybe it was number 5 at Augusta when he was playing with Scotty this year. And it's like, he had a 5 iron in and Scotty had an 8 iron. And it's just like, well, Scotty was not the best iron player in the world, and he's hitting 3 clubs less than you into a green. Like, I'm going to bet he hits it closer. And And ultimately the scoring again is just like, okay, you're closer, you're going to hit it on average closer, you're more likely to make that next putt. And, thanks for coming out over 4 days of golf.
Yeah, I think Andy talked a lot about that too. Is actually just heard a podcast that he did talking about that, driving distance also equals accuracy. As long as you can find it off the tee, you're going to have that short clump in. Like I'm going to play, if I'm in a pitching wedge, I'm going to play something in the 6-iron all day long.
Yeah, for sure. I think it, then it just ties into longevity, which is with a lot of the amateur players that we see where it's, it gets to be a not super fun game if you can't get it on the par fours and two. And, there's still right or wrong. There's still like an ego thing in golf too, that you don't want your buddies to drive it past you, or you don't want to move up a tee set if your friends are staying behind you, which I understand. But, I see a lot of people that want to chase speed because of that as well. Hey, I'm having a hard time getting to this green, or I can't keep up with the guys I've always played with, et cetera, and want to try to get better from there. Yeah, I think physically the best part of working on speed from my end is it is a good way to get golfers to think about their fitness, which I think is an underrated part of golf. It's a great way to stay physically active, to motivate yourself, to improve your body, to try to get out of pain and all of those things. So if we just looked at it, I think with all the discussion around speed in the professional game, these guys are just getting to be better athletes. It's not the only reason. I think we all know there's a big technical aspect with the driver faces and the golf balls and things like that. But truly, there are some really big physical drivers of speed, that getting stronger, getting more explosive, improving your mobility, just being an overall better athlete will help you hit the golf ball farther. And I just think you are seeing at the top level of the game, you're seeing better athletes decide to play golf rather than basketball or some other sports that maybe previously they never would have done. And then I think the other thing for older players in particular, and once you start losing speed, it can be harder to get it back. A way easier speed gaining strategy for an older player is just to stop losing speed in the first place. So if you can just maintain your swing speed over a longer period of time, you are going to age in golf well relative to your peers, because everyone else is typically losing a couple miles an hour a year. And so even if you can just stop the slide, which happens earlier than people think, really even in late 30s into their 40s, if you're not doing something to offset it, you will just start getting slowly over time. And then all of a sudden, by the time you're 65, 70, it's wow, the golf ball is not going anywhere. So that didn't happen overnight. Like, it's been a slow slide. It just finally got bad enough that now you can't get it to that par four. And so again, I think that is one of the benefits in my world and on my end of golfers wanting to do this, is there's some good health side effects of the speed chase. So what do you see when a golfer sets out and says, I want to hit it farther this offseason? What are some common mistakes that you see as they go on this kind of speed journeys?
Yeah, I think the idea of the speed part is just swinging harder.
Yeah.
And creating this more clubhead speed. And it's maybe not as advertised as the ball speed part of it. And so I think the first part of that of swinging harder, for me, there's a difference between swinging harder and swinging faster.
Yeah.
So to me, harder, in my experience, more comes from the top, trying to hit more down on the golf ball. But we know now, just from our fires and just her research that we have available, that hitting down on that driver too much could add spin. Maybe you're swinging it harder, you're trying harder.
Yeah.
But the ball's not going farther, which is our end goal. So I really try to get players to turn off the idea of I need to swing harder to I need to swing faster. And maybe that just comes as simply as what we've talked about, is swinging your arms faster. And not swinging your arms faster just from the very top of your swing down, but to even make a little bit more of an up-tempo backswing to get your body used to swinging faster right from the start. Now, does that mean you have to fire your arms back to where everything's out of sequence? No. But I will say that as the arms start to move faster, the body starts to react. It can't just be a 0 to 100 thing. But if you ever find yourself running late for a meeting and you're walking a little more up tempo, your arms are pumping a little bit faster. On the other side of that, if you're maybe a little too early, you're strolling around, maybe a Sunday night walk with the family, your arms aren't pumping too much.
Yeah.
So I think that is the first thing. The second thing is really, if you're going to go through the speed training, you're going to go faster, and you really have to give yourself a little bit of grace, especially when you first start, on your dispersion. If you are training for speed, I always tell players, train for speed. That's what we're doing in this block of time. It can't be a huge block of time because there's a threshold of energy that we have that it will start going down. But if we're going to train for speed, we're going to train for speed. I don't care where it's going to go right now. I'm focused more on unlocking some joints and letting things feel a little freer. And if it goes 50, 80 yards, okay, it happens.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting. And I think you make a good point. If you listen to a tour player talk, you'll almost never hear them mention their club head speed. They all talk about ball speed, like 177 to 180. He's 183. And same thing in the long drive world, which we work a couple world long drive guys. They all talk about ball speeds. Now the numbers are insane. It's 235, 233, like stuff like that. But that's what they feel like is in their control, because they don't talk about distance in their world, at least, because altitude, wind directions, all of those things. In club head speed, obviously it does affect the ball speed, but in that ball speed number, then you account for hitting it high on the face and catching it spinny, or hitting down on it and getting it to spin more. That ball speed element, chasing that rather than club head speed, I think sometimes might be more impactful for players.
It's so hard to outdo poor contact. Centerness of contact is the number one thing that will help us with our ball speed. Low toe, low heel, that ball is going to come out low, it's going to come out spinny, and you will actually see more ball speed swinging slightly slower and hitting it in the middle. That you start to ramp up your speed and hit it all over the face.
Yeah, and I think when you break it down, like if we break down a sport from we talk a lot about KPIs, like key performance indicators. We'll get into some of the details because we have some good research on the golf swing, on physically what can relate to it. But it's like club head speed probably doesn't, when you look at those PGA Tour averages, it's driving distance. It's not higher club head speed that gets it there. It's how far does the golf ball go? And when we talk about the best athletes in the world and what's the ideal thing to chase in athleticism, we talk about efficiency, which is the highest possible outputs at the lowest possible energy cost. And it's if you could theoretically hit 183 ball speed, which is like elite PGA Tour driving distance, and you were swinging at 70% effort, right? And you could hit it in the middle with the perfect launch conditions, get the ball coming out the right spin, that would be way better. And you'd probably know some of these numbers, but let's say that was 115 miles an hour with the club head and you just tagged it perfectly every time and that's going to be way better than the person that has to swing it at all out 90% effort. They're wild. And yes, the ball still goes E3, but they had to work way harder across 72 holes, across multiple days, across a whole season. That efficiency of movement really starts to play a role.
Yeah, absolutely. And generally speaking, we're going to be more efficient than going back to that contact, right?
Yeah.
So someone swinging at 90 to 95% of what they could swing, you are going to get that one that's off the planet way more often.
Yeah.
So again, over the course of a tournament, you get two of those. That could be 2, 3, 4 shots. That could be making the cut, not making the cut. That could be winning for second. That could be winning your club championship or not, whatever it is, whatever you're playing for. Having that efficiency is critical.
Yeah, no, it's enormous. So, yeah, I think physically what we see a lot of times is golfers they think that they chase speed without a solid base, so they don't have the strength, they don't have the power, they don't have the mobility, their body's not ready for that. That can lead to some injury things. A lot of times they don't pay attention to recovery, so they just willy-nilly decide they're going to swing speed sticks with no like real plan of like where does it go in your week, those types of things. And then just not working with an instructor as they do it, where it's just going to grab this set of sticks and I'm going to swing all out with no real understanding of how I'm creating the speed. And we tend to see, I'm not a golf coach, but I just haven't seen that translate to the course. That they definitely can get those moving quicker, but does it actually result in the golf ball going farther when you're playing? Maybe not. So I guess if you were going to look at trying to build somebody, like somebody that wants to get faster, wants to go about it in the right way where it actually transfers to the course, what are some of the like technical aspects golf swing wise that you could do just to move more efficiently and ultimately get the golf ball moving faster?
Yeah, I think the first is, I know we talked about it on the last podcast, but actually setting up, whether it's grip stance, all of that combined, that fits you, right? So someone that is gripping the club incorrectly is going to make adjustments to square the face, and they're going to manipulate it more. The more you start to manipulate, generally the slower you're going to swing it. So that's the first thing. And then once we get there, we're going to try to find the correct sequencing. So golf is from the ground ups kind of sport. So it's more hip, torso, arm, club. That's our kinematic sequence. We can certainly do some drills to help make that sequence happen. And we use things like Sports Box, and that actually gives us the kinematic sequence.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. We talk about someone that's trying to swing it hard and swing it from the top. Maybe their arms are going first. That's going to be really difficult to generate speed from that. So we might have to do a couple like movement drills for that. And then we work into, once we can do that, we have a good sequence with our body and how the club moves through. Then we might start talking about more ground reaction forces. So that's more the kinetic sequence. So can we get a player to work through a swing more lateral forces first, followed by rotational, and then our vertical forces? So if we miss time those, that's a big speed killer.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's just one of those things that if you can stop doing the stuff that is killing your speed,
Yes.
like you can pick up a bunch of speed just without doing anything crazy, but by eliminating the downside. I guess, what do you start seeing from the club in terms of face and path and things like that when people are trying to swing hard rather than swing fast?
Yeah, I tend to see more out in paths.
Okay.
Because generally we're trying to do it from the top. So usually if we are trying to swing it hard from the top, our shoulders are going to open early. So we're switching that lateral, then rotational. It becomes rotational, then lateral. And what happens is that club kicks out, and now we have to swing out in order to get to the ball. The problem with that is that kind of acts as a steepener, especially with a driver. And if we add too many steepeners, that starts to add some spin. And now that ball speed starts lowering a little bit, much a wedge, right? Not so much a driver. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see. If we are really getting our chest open very early and we are swinging a little more out to in on that, I do tend to see more of an open club face with that. And that is also going to be a ball speed killer because as that club is pointing more to the right for a right-handed player, so it's open, that club's actually gaining loft. Gaining loft and making it go farther tend to not
Go hand in hand
yeah,
with speed.
tend to not do that.
Yeah. No, I think that is really interesting. And it just gets to be one of the things that I think there's tools to help people hit it farther. And I think everyone, when people say speed, they instantly think about like some of the different speed training systems that are out there. And there's nothing wrong with them, but are there any other tools that you use that you found can help with some of those kinematic sequencing or maybe changing how players use the ground that you could use hand in hand, or maybe, again, just on that efficiency of movement before. I'd say the speed sticks are like on the effort side. Learn how to
unlocking
versus the efficiency side, which is like move better.
Yes. So the one thing I do really to use is called the force pedal. I'm not sponsored by this.
There's no discount code.
No discount code. No force pedal 20 or nothing like that. No, but I like to use it because it's something that players get really good feedback on. I would just put it under their lead ball of their foot, and I will have them push down into it while they're making their swings. And when they feel themselves pushed down into it, that is going to effectively take care of that lateral motion that happens first. And as they push off of it, that's the vertical force that should happen last. And they've really actually seen some pretty good speed gains just from changing
those pressure fields.
Yes, absolutely. So I use that. I cut the handle off a ping pong paddle and got it so that it's tilted in, something to push off of for more of that lateral force. Think of like a starter's block.
Yeah.
So just things like that, like using those kind of tools to promote that first force being a lateral force, that's going to really shallow out the club a little bit easier and give the club a really good opportunity to come into the ball the correct way, to not get too much spin and to have still a pretty square face. And the last thing, I just have them make continuous swings. It might be 3, it might be 5, whatever they need, but it's going to really help find the balance of the swing. So I think the sequencing is really about finding the balance of it. So if we have an off sequence, we're going to have to fight to stay balanced, where if we can keep the club moving in a motion, they'll start to find the balance, and then we can ramp it up from there.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. And it's kind of there's nothing wrong with doing the speed sticks. I think there's certain times it's just like it's working on like a different element. And I think it's really important to have a plan of, okay, if we're going to do that, maybe let's use 3D to make sure that we're not seeing changes, or maybe it's using the launch monitor data to make sure that we're not hitting it way spinnier or contacts done as part of a overall thing. And I personally think it's almost better once you really get efficient with what you have. Now would be a great time to bring that higher effort into it if it's done correctly.
And it as a bonus tool, not the tool.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what I see physically too. The instant you hear speed training and everyone just thinks of those, it's like that is one aspect. Like we can definitely get the hands and arms and body just rotating faster, and think they're good for that. There's no golf balls. People are willing to go at it harder, which is great. It just shows you how fast you can do it. When we look at the research, and this is something that's been relatively well studied. Now, what I'd say the research has been studied on the club head speed, just to be fair. This goes back to you have to deliver the club to the golf ball with the optimal launch conditions and hit it in the middle of the face. But there's a few things that we know are the biggest drivers that if we just said, hey, you were delivering the club to the golf ball in an optimal condition, and you kept doing that, if we increase what's called your vertical impulse during a vertical jump, which is just how hard you push into the ground, that is going to increase club head speed. We improve your upper body explosive strength. We can look at this in a couple ways, like med ball throws, bench press power, those types of things. That is going to help improve your club head speed. And then rotational power as well being another big one, which kind of combines both that lower and upper body thing. The interesting thing from some of these studies is flexibility was not a big driver of club head speed. Now, I would say from anecdotal evidence, like when you look at a study across a wide range of people, maybe there are some people that had no flexibility limitations. I do think in players that are extremely restricted, lacking range of motion, the idea is improving mobility is going to help the club go through a bigger arc. If it can go through a bigger arc, if Jason can help you get it in better position, maybe you can deliver the club to the golf ball better. That might improve ball speed and those types of things. So it's not that it's worthless, but I think a lot of times when people hear golf fitness, they just think stretching, and it's a component, but in this regard, it's actually not one of the key drivers. It's maybe something secondary that we work at. And we really want to focus on improving your power from an in-gym standpoint, which is, again, why the winter can be a great time to take some of the time from the playing golf, practicing golf, etc. Use a little bit of that time to just build a bigger engine that theoretically, if you don't change anything, if you do everything exactly the same way you are, and you're just able to push into the ground a little harder because you're a little stronger, a little more explosive.
Yeah.
The club head is going to move faster. As long as you don't do anything else to deliver it and miss the center of the face or anything, you should see then some of those distance gains. On the mobility side, the big ones are going to be hip range of motion, thoracic spine range of motion. That's really going to help you with that shoulder turn and getting better there. And then also sometimes the ankle range of motion that can help with maintaining your posture, getting over to that lead side, and at times making a little bit better move at it as you keep going through the course of the time there. So once we have the requisite strength, power, mobility, we've been working on our movement efficiency over. Now I think that's where it's time to say, okay, if you want to do some of the overspeed stuff and it's monitored and we've got some good baseline of like, how do you swing it when you're hitting it good? And let's make sure we don't get away from that as we start doing this other stuff. If anyone's ever tried any of those workouts with the speed sticks, it definitely gets your heart rate up. There's a definite fitness component to it that it can incorporate into it, but it needs to be planned. The risk of injury is not super high, but it needs to be incorporated into your workouts for you to get something out of it, and you need to allow recovery, or else you're going to work really hard, but you're not going to see the end results on my end, at least. That's how we like to see it overall get incorporated. When a player comes into our office, I would like to spend the winter in the gym trying to get a little bit more in shape, a little bit fitter, and then try to hit it a little farther next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we were going to put a blueprint together and say player A would to pick up 10 to 15 yards, 20 yards so that he can make it to the par fours, it doesn't have to move up a tee box, which is an option. It's a lot less effort. Just go up one tee box and you're probably going to accomplish the same thing as this, just for your reference. But
Sure.
How do we go about doing that? What would you say the steps that you would take would be?
Yeah, I think it's also important that 1 mile per hour is like 2.5 yards.
Yeah.
So if we're going just 4 miles per hour, which I think is pretty darn doable.
Yeah.
That's your 10 yards. So that could be from a number of things. That could just be from unlocking yourself a little bit and swinging it a little freer. It could be a million things, right? So I think the first step, obviously, understanding exactly what we're trying to do, right? And from there, I know we keep repeating ourselves on this one, right? But we have to screen. We have to understand what that player does. In my world, I screen for post. So front post, more rotating around their lead hip, rear post, rotating around more of their trail hip in the bad side. A front post player, and let's say they grip it more on top with their right hand for a right-handed player, that person is definitely going to be using more vertical. So for me, I have to understand what that player does first. Then we can start looking at what parts we're really going to fix. So we do that screen, then probably be with a power screen, testing verticals and all that kind of stuff with Kinetic. And then from there, we're trying to figure out, is it a motion thing, but we're not in the correct sequence, or we are not using the ground correctly? Or is it a thing where the misconception is that I need to swing without my hands? Maybe we need to introduce some hands and arms into that swing, kind of free that up. So once we find that out, then we can work on. So if it's more of a ground force thing, then we'll get more into the force pedals. If it's a sequencing thing, we'll get more into the 3 swings and those different step drills, sequencing drills, stuff like that. If it's a freeing thing, maybe we will go to some speed sticks, unlock things a little bit, then introduce a club into that and keep building them up that way. So it's just so player dependent, which is why it's so important that you see your coach, whoever that may be, and a PT or whoever, to really get a blueprint of yourself first. Then you can work into your programs.
Yeah. And again, it just saves you a lot of time and effort too. If you have a roadmap, then rather than just randomly trying things, like you can actually make progress because you're working on the right thing. Right. So you could probably spend less time and get more out of it than just randomly taking guesses. I think it's something that's interesting because when you look at the guys on the PGA Tour that we keep mentioning that have picked up speed and had success, it's not just that they picked up speed, it's that they picked up speed and they didn't. Dispersion probably increased a little bit, but it's not like they hit it all over the planet. Like relatively speaking. And yeah, driving accuracy is not like a super rewarding stat for tour success, but there's also a threshold that like they're not hitting out of bounds, they're not hitting in hazards, like the things that are key score killers.
Right.
I think that's what goes into the thing that you're working on and talking about is sometimes if you actually pick up some speed by moving your body more efficiently, that actually results in like improved strike, which then typically results in going straighter or those types of things too. So you can see other gains from there.
Yeah. I mean, there's also been tests done. I think Pinehurst did the test where Group A was hit it as far as you possibly can. I don't care where it goes. Group B was, I don't care what you have to do, just make it go in the fairway. If it has to go this far. And the group that tried really hard to hit it in the fairway was more crooked. So now they're shorter and more crooked. So there's certainly something to free it up. You really can't have more speed and also way more tension and less motion.
Yeah, for sure. So I think once you have that plan, then, if you're really serious about gaining speed, and I think, again, the easiest way to just improve driving distance is honestly getting more efficient with your swing. If you've got some swing faults that are resulting in the poor strike, but from a physical standpoint in the gym, which I think is great to take advantage of kind of simultaneously in the winter, really realistically, this is where you're going to need it at least 3 times a week in the gym or doing some type of physical fitness. We're probably going to have 2 to 3 days focused on strength and power, 2 to 3 days focused more on like the mobility recovery side. And then depending on what your speed training routine looks like and when you start incorporating that with your coach, 1 to 2 times is common, 3 times at the most. And it doesn't have to be a full-on speed training like workout with the sticks. It could be 5 driver swings as hard as you can at the start of a range session or something like that. So there's other ways to like work on getting comfortable swinging the golf club faster. But at some point, if you want to swing it faster, you do have to practice swinging it faster. Yes. If that makes sense. And really not a ton of that. That's going to be like the least frequent from an in-gym standpoint. It's going to be much more time spent on that strength and power development, a little bit of time on the mobility and recovery, and then just sprinkling the speed on top. Once you have, in my opinion, the efficient movement patterns, and then trying to add speed versus trying to add speed on top of inefficient movement patterns.
Absolutely.
And then I think step 4 is like tracking. Is it working? Well, again, we're in the simulator. You're going to get live data from the launch monitor. If you're with a coach that has the sports box, looking at changes to your movement patterns in the swing. On our end, we can measure the physical power improvements. So we can actually look at trends and say, hey, is the training working? Are we getting more explosive? Are there other areas that we need to target? And really tracking that over the course of time, and then just tweaking the program as you go and just iterating slightly off of what's working or how they need to go about improving it. Okay, let's talk about some things that go wrong.
Ow.
So what are some things that if you've had a player kind of go away during the summer, say all winter, they go chase speed, they come back to you in the springs, it gets nice outside, haven't taken a lesson all winter, and said, hey, my club head speed's way higher, you start hitting golf balls. What are some things that you've seen if it didn't go the way they wanted to?
I think the biggest thing is if it was maybe a little too heavy in one part without some of the others that we've talked about, because there's not a feedback with club face and ball, I see a lot of open club faces. So that, as we know, we talked about, we get a little more speed, that cone of dispersion starts to widen a little bit. So I think the first thing I see is sometimes a lack of face control. Same thing with, it can be strike. Now, sometimes it improves strike, right? So
that's good.
That's great.
Yeah.
That'd be ideal. But I would say more than that is just face control. And that's just something where we have to learn our tools, right? We have to learn open, close with a club face. And that's fine. That is a potential issue. However, if you have the speed, I can teach you how to hit it straight. It's what we talk about with juniors a lot, right? It's okay to hit it crooked if you're after speed and you have it and you're hitting it pretty good in the middle of the face, but we just need to tweak the face angle. That's fine. We could do that. The other thing that I've seen just as a result of the speed training is maybe too much emphasis on the speed training and then forgetting there's other parts to this. Maybe they are hitting it 20 yards farther, but their wedges lost out a little bit because, generally speaking, if you're working on speed, it's hard to dial it back. I would just say be mindful of, you want to strengthen your weaknesses, but don't make your strengths weaker in the process.
Yeah, for sure. Unless you're trying to compete on a long drive tour, which totally great. Like,
also great players out there. They score with the best.
You're doing this to get the ball in the hole ultimately. And so you can't lose the other things. Not worrying about the golf performance side as much for us, and just saying, like, from a physical side, there is an injury risk anytime we try to chase high performance, right? The faster we try to run, sprint, jump, throw, hit a golf ball, like, we're pushing our bodies. So there is always a injury risk. Honestly, we have not experienced people having significant pain issues. Where we do see it is with players that just don't have a plan, and they just do it too much. They do it at the wrong time. They don't warm up appropriately beforehand. They're just going about doing it. Or we see a lot of arm issues with grip, elbow, or shoulder things from the players that they're not trying to move their body more efficiently. They're just trying to swing that hard sensation where they're overusing their upper body. And most of the speed is supposed to come from that lower body, that efficient transfer. And then we see sore and cranky grips, elbows, shoulders, etc., from trying to do too much. And so that's if we see issues, which again, it's not that common, it's not enough rest, it's improper timing, not enough warm up, or then that inefficient sequence. And then at some point, something gets irritated and starts barking at you and telling you you're doing something inappropriate. And I think, like, with that and what you're saying and why we're doing this early in the season is, I think everyone's thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
But if it's something that you want to do, it is a great time. And it's almost a great time to start earlier, where you can maybe have a little time to work on the efficiency. That still leaves you some time that you can work on the horsepower. You can do some stuff in the gym. And then we're far enough out from the season that you can, if you spent 2 months focusing on this, you'd still have another 2 months that you can really dial it back into, okay, we picked up some speed. We've got these movement patterns now. Let's make sure strike's locked in. Let's make sure the face control is great. The wedges are dialed in.
Yeah.
Like, we got everything else before you go outside. If you wait too close to the spring, you do this leading right into the golf season. Sometimes you go outside and it doesn't go as well as you'd like it to.
Definitely.
So I think it's one of those, like, sooner is better as you're doing this.
What's the old saying? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good thing, especially up here, since we have such a clear off-season, in-season of golf. I think it's harder to do down in Florida or some of the nice places that you don't want to waste good weather days doing it. So I think we see a lot of people try up here, and it's great and can really help if you go about it the right way. So hopefully this gives a little context, a thought process for people as they get started. To recap, if we were to summarize these first 2 podcasts, get assessed physically by some type of movement professional, skill-wise from a golf coach. If you want to go down the speed route, make sure it's something that's worth doing. Make sure it's help you. Probably work on the efficiency, swing stuff, grip, setup, get in those right patterns where you know how to use the ground and all those things. Spend some time in the gym making sure your body's ready for this journey, and then start small and see where it goes from there. And even, like Jason was saying, picking up 10 yards, it's at least a club less into the green.
Yep.
Pick up 10 yards with the iron. It could be 2 clubs less as you go. Really small changes in this regard can make really big differences for players as you go. And we would love to assist. I think, Jason, you're on Skillist, right? For some online lessons and things like that.
Yep. On Skillist, there's an assessment, an option. We would just get on a Zoom call. We would, like I mentioned in the first episode, talk about different measurements and how they affect your swing and what you would do to create some speed. And we'll go from there.
Same thing through the end of the year. We're offering 50% off these golf assessments where you can come in, we scale it to your goals. So if you're wanting to go through that speed process, we do the mobility assessment, see how your body's moving, make sure you're safe to get started with this, and then also measure the power and your power profile, identify upper body, lower body, total body weaknesses, start putting together a program both to help you with the warm-up and getting ready, moving more efficiently, hopefully getting more out of your lessons, and then ultimately getting some more horsepower through the arms and legs that just make it easier to move the golf club faster, even without really having to try that much harder. If that's something that you're interested in, we'll make sure we have the link for Jason's skill list in here. You can contact us through the website. That'll be in there as well. We would love to help you guys as you chase your winter goals. Thanks to everyone that's listening. We have a couple more of these planned. We're going to keep trying to do them once a month, roughly. We're going to have some kind of transitioning drills to how do you start making your inside practice and game translate out onto the course as we get closer and closer to the start of the golf season, which can't come soon enough.
Not as far away as we think.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Jason.